so much research has gone on about them. Just so much research is sort of gone on. My experience of grading is slightly horrific, actually. And I've had such great conversations with kids about what they would rather have. And obviously formative assessment and verbal feedback, peer feedback, self-assessment, all these things are so valuable. And if there's some kind of portfolio, I was just brainstorming with kids the other day and about the idea that if you had, say, team building skills, and you could click on the button that said team building skills, and under it, instead of a grade, you could have comments that might that would
exactly
just say, like, this was on this date, this tutor and this project, and here's a quote of what my feedback that I got under this. So you could then select all the quotes and put dates and, you know, projects and teachers next to them, so teachers are signing their name to that quote. And then you're building up an online portfolio of quotes and references rather than grades, which are so much more meaningful.
Exactly, because grades can be so I think capricious, if I can use that word, because it depends so much on the teacher and the relationship the learner has with the teacher. And so it's, I completely agree with you. It means, for me, when I'm hiring somebody, it means so much more to me to be able to see what's this person's impression, what are the things that they've picked out as being, you know, the skills that the learner has, where are the things that they can develop, what are their competencies, and one of the things that and you know this because of your relationship with Learnlife, but one of the things that we do are these 360 conversations with the kids, where at the end of a cycle, which is the first 3 months, is they give feedback. They give a presentation about what they've learned, what their skills are, and it isn't just like a PowerPoint presentation about a research project. It's about the process that they went through, the things that they learned along the way, areas that they think that they can improve upon, the ways that they grew, not just in a knowledge way, but in an emotional way, which for teenagers is just, incredible. And then they get feedback from their learning guide, right? Who says, well, this is, they call them tips and tops. Here's some tips on how you can improve. Here are the places that you did exceptionally well. And then the peers come out and give their feedback. And every single one of these 360s that I've sat in on, it's like, I'm sitting there and thinking to myself, I don't know any teenagers that could give feedback like this. They're giving feedback that is so personal and so supportive and constructive. And I'm always amazed by it, right? And I said to the LGs afterwards, the learning guys, I said, you need to take this, embody it in some form, and put it where they can, go back to it later, not just as a pick-me-up, but as something where, they can showcase it and say, my peers have said da, 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 da. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And if they start gathering this information together, then they can pick and choose what it is that they want and then showcase it. There's a woman called Helen Barrett, and she talks about the two different faces of portfolios. And on one side, it's the reflective piece and the storing information piece. I can send that to you, to the link to that. But she talks about how, first you have to go through the process of bringing everything together, right? Where they're compiling everything, all of their outputs, what they've learned, the challenges that they faced. And then from that, they take it out and then they create their showcase, right? Where they say, this is what I did. This is how I've gotten there. And so one part is really kind of the journey. And then the other is what came out of that journey and that experience. So I love that idea. I mean, that's great. I mean,
do Learnlife record those sessions? Do they record the 360 sessions so you could take the quotes out of it and write them down? And
they don't record them right now. But that is something that I've encouraged them to do in the future, because it's such a personal thing a lot of times. But if they made the recording and then made it available just to the learner, I think that would be good, because then they could keep track of it. And that's also something that, I mean, I told, when I first started at Learnlife in December, I said, if we're going to do this online thing, we have to have portfolios. And not only do we have portfolios, but we have reflective learning journals, because this is so important. If you're going to guide a learner to, you know, to develop certain skills, you have to know where they are. And so many times we don't know where they are, especially if we're in an online environment, because we don't know how are they feeling, what kinds of things are they struggling with, and they have to have to also go through this process of becoming reflective practitioners, because if they don't learn how to reflect, it's going to be very difficult for them to have that skill of solving problems in the future within different contexts. And so this is one of the things. There's a book by a guy named Donald Shun. It's called The Reflective Practitioner, and anybody who's worked in academia and in industry, it's absolutely fabulous, because it explains why these two I guess entities don't get along. Because academia thinks they have all the answers and industry is creating answers as they go through the process. And Donald Shun calls it reflective practice, and they need this, and they have to have that in order to have this lifelong learning. And I'm talking and talking, so I'm going to let you guys talk.
I agree,
Hi,
because
Joe.
I've been talking with Joe about this quite a bit, because we're both trying to build Learnlife hubs, and it's such an essential part of the whole thing. And it's like, and it's what Joe was saying too, was that it's not just about what you present to a university as an online portfolio, but it's also what you then present to employers, because you might not want to go to university. So it's creating a lifelong learning kind of digital CV in a way. It's like the future of CVs is not, I mean, I know people do it through LinkedIn now, but there must be a more interesting way that we can model that works in schools, and then you can slowly develop it towards the sort of lifelong use of this platform, which you're personally able to manage your sort of, it's like your portfolio. This is, as you say, it's like about self-assessment. What skills do you want to show? What quotes would you want to put in it? And can we do it without grades? It would just be such a great opportunity if there's a digital format to do it without grades. I mean,
I completely agree. Completely
Anyway,
agree with you.
I would up
if
for
you look
helping
at
you. If there's any way I can work with you and help me do this, let's do it.
Definitely. And there's so much, if you look at where universities are going right now, many of them, they're starting to say, oh, well, maybe we don't need the grade, we don't need the tests before they get in. They want to see these kinds of things. They want to see things like digital portfolios. They're taking prior learning and they're taking it and giving kids credit for it, for the work that they've done. And there's more of a movement toward that. Another really big movement is this whole micro credential movement, right? So, you know, someone might take a course in economics, right? And it's a 6-week course. They could get some credits for that from the university. More and more, the movement within higher education is really packaging your own degree and building it yourself. That we're not there yet, but all of the EU projects that I've been involved in the last 5 or 6 years, that's what they've been talking about. They've been saying we can't expect that our students are going to be people that come in and they're there for 4 years. They're going to be people that come with different experience, with different portfolios of experience, different knowledge, and we're going to need to be able to take that and then build a package for them. And so, I mean, I think we're not there yet. I mean, we're definitely not going to be there for a long time. But for me, it's exciting to see that, at least Europe anyway, that they're moving in that direction with micro credentials and recognizing prior learning.
I had a good meeting with.
Hi everyone.
I'll let you go.
No, do you want to go, Rossini?
No, I was just saying that I spoke with James.
I listened to him.
Did you remember James Prideaux? I spoke with him this morning from Skills Builder. He was on our meeting with Learnlife, and
yes,
he was talking about Skills Builder, because I was asking him the same question and whether they have it, because they go into schools and work with teachers doing teacher training, and they build up the 8 essential skills that they consider to be. And I was like, they've got lovely little icons. I'm like, couldn't you just get a badge if you've done well in your teamwork? How do you get, what I'm really looking for is, how do you show that exactly, as Lisa Marie is saying, is like, what if you've done you know, bridge building one day and rock climbing the next day. Or if you're doing all these little projects, you might be doing first aid, or you might be doing astrophysics, and you might do these short courses. But if you're building it, how do you evidence that? And it's just, if we're creating a new paradigm in education, we need to be able to evidence that for kids. Anyway, I'll let you.
Yeah, and I feel quite excited that it'd almost be a sort of a little bit like a concertina, that you could stretch it out for those places that need this full depth of information, and you know, for college applications. But actually you could then wonderfully click a button and it would all shrink down to, you know, some places just want a short CV, don't they? They don't want this big, but you could, you know, there's got to be a creative way. I'm not a coder, but I've been able to go, actually, can you go through my lifelong learning portfolio and pull out everything that's relevant to demonstrating that I'm a leader, or that I work well in a team? And it could go through and just pull out all those beautiful quotes from, you know, your 360 reviews, which would say, this is evidence of me being a great, you know, you could then craft your application based on your lifelong learning portfolio. I think would be beautiful. And you're right, Rosina, it could be visual, which would be really nice. Not just, nothing needs to just be text anymore, does it? In terms of making
Have you
it
seen the Lumiere model, what it looks like, the Lumiere's mosaic?
Yeah, I've seen Lumiere's mosaic. Have you
I've
seen
never
it?
seen it because I think it's copyrighted, isn't it? So they don't want to show it to you too readily.
Have you seen it, Lisa Marie?
No.
It looks.
No, I haven't seen it.
So they have two circles, which look like, if you imagine a Roman mosaic, as in lots of little concentric circles coming out, which get bigger and bigger. And the two circles are for capture different, like, overarching themes, and I can't remember what those are, and I haven't got notes with me. I've got extensive notes somewhere at home, but not with me. And then what's clever is then when you click onto like a strip within that mosaic, it kind of zooms out and it gets bigger. And then within that mosaic, with that section of the mosaic, there are then like 50 more skills, which are then highlighted. And what they do is they color in the mosaic sections as the skills get demonstrated or seen, and they rate each section on a scale of 1 to 5. So 1 is it's not been achieved at all, and 5 is someone's like maxed out and off the, you know, really grabbed the concept and internalized it and making it work. So it's really clever. And I think there's a huge potential. But of course, the way the mosaic therefore works is that all the projects the kids do within the Lumiere school have to fit within the parameters of the mosaic. So you have to be able to therefore frame a project based on these 15 skills from the mosaic, and then the child self-reflects and the learning guide reflects, and then the parents contribute, and that builds up the mosaic. So it's very, very clever, but it's also it's quite complex. I think if you took it, say, to an employer or a university application, you would have to spend quite a bit of time explaining. Like it's almost over engineered for what is needed. So it's beautiful, and I think if you could teach it to everybody really, really quickly, it would be brilliant. But I think the downside of it is it's quite complicated. Like, it's visually quite pleasing because you can roll your mouse over it and different things pop up, and it's you know, it's genius. And you know, they've spent 15 years designing it, so it's been streamlined, and it keeps evolving. But it's quite complicated. And I think my understanding is it does stop at 18 at the moment. So when you graduate from Lumiere, you can't add in, it's job done.
I'm smiling, Joe, because I just was in a meeting this week with one of our designers, one of our user interface designers that is working with the tech team. And one of the things that they have in the learner profile or the learner vitae when they come out is exactly that, where they've got all of the skills, all of the key learning navigation skills that they need to have, and where they are, you know, how far are they in each of different areas. And it's beautiful. I mean, it's different colors for different skills, and it's just, yeah. I mean, it's not a portfolio, but it's something that they could include in a portfolio. So yeah, no, that's why I'm smiling, because I'm like, oh yeah, we're going in that direction.
So Learnlife's got one of those, is that what you're saying? Or you're developing?
We're working on it. We're working on the development of it. Yeah. Yeah. So that's exciting, because that makes you feel we're going in the right direction.
And it's good. Lumia's model is brilliant. Don't get me wrong. It's like, it's complete genius. It's just the complexity in terms of rollout, I suppose. Is it, you couldn't just take it to market and say, hey guys, here's an amazing online portfolio. And yet I feel there's a big hole in the market in terms of, creating
I think the really cool thing about
which,
I think the cool thing about portfolios too is that kids can do it themselves, you know, and they come up with some really, really great ideas on how to do it. And they just need guidance in the sense of, you know, what kinds of things could I include? And if you just give them a few little tips, they just go with it. You know, my son has done that with his website, you know, because he started first he started to do photography. He started with a website, and then he moved it to Instagram. So now he's doing all of his in Instagram, right? That's a platform that he chose. And so he just took it. All he needed was a little bit of input, like what kinds of things are employers interested in? What kinds of things, you know, would he want to showcase? And then he decided, well, I'm doing photography, so in video, so Instagram needs to be where I do that. And you know, he's actually been doing really well. Been really surprised monetarily too.
And maybe that's it, Lisa Marie. I mean, maybe we've still got an old mindset of feeling like we need this thing, but you know, perhaps it is you create your own website and actually showcase yourself, and then your individuality comes out within your website. So for your son, it's a creative photography, music, whereas for a more techie person, it might be examples of, you know, things they've coded, or, you know, home experiments they've enjoyed doing because they're pursuing physics, or a, you know, I don't know, a mouse they've dissected because they're passionate about being a vet. I don't know. I wonder whether actually maybe having a physical portfolio, not a physical portfolio, it's obviously going to be online, but maybe perhaps it is as simple as, is my website. But within that there would be tools that you could draw in, so like the circle that you're describing that Learnlife are building in terms of mapping skills. Perhaps actually what kids are looking for is a simple template which has some of those basics in terms of, as in potential employers, we're helping them think about what they would like, but then actually it's for the teenager, the adult to I don't know, infill, I don't know. And then there would be a space for the, you know, the credits, the micro credits that you've earned, or the courses you've achieved. And I don't know, just thinking out loud, sorry, I'm outwardly processing.
No, that's okay.
Because I listened to a talk this week from a guy called Michael Tai, who's based in California, and he is, what's his name? He's a college admissions consultant. So he helps American kids get into college. And he was just talking about how it's just shifted dramatically in the States in terms of it's less of a tick box activity. And he said what he's seeing more and more now is kids coming to him with this, how do I create my own course? Because I don't want to do 4 years, which cost me, you know, $100,000, and I come out with all this debt, and I'm not going to get a graduate, I'm not going to get a scholarship. So he says he's actually spending lots of kids, what's he call it, course, helping them be smart consumers of online courses. And that actually they're realizing they can craft their own course, which I guess ties in with what you're saying about this micro course accreditation,
micro credentials.
Micro credentials. And I think, gosh, that's really interesting, because he said he's getting more and more kids coming to him who want to do that now. You know, lockdown's shown them that actually you don't need to do a 4 years at MIT anymore, but actually MIT offer a lot of courses and you could pick the bits you want. And you think, gosh, that whole world of university just shifting. And he was saying apparently the University of California this week dropped the requirement for SATs to get in. And he said that's been huge news in America. And and he said, you know, that shook. He said, it's just been in the press a week. He said, that's all they're talking about is this big shift. And I was like, gosh, we're in such a change of, there's just a huge shift, isn't there? There's this massive mindset shift, and we're at the cusp. But he was really fascinating in terms of just what he's observing. So, and he was fascinating to ask questions of, I guess.
You, I mean, is Learnlife looking? Do you have like for the teachers or the tutors? Do you have a kind of assessment criteria that's being used as a model?
There is assessment criteria. They're working on rubrics right now for different learning experiences, and that's going to be part of the new learnings, that the new system that we end up coming up with or are in the process of developing. And it's really looking at, you know, what are the skills that that learners need to develop, and then how do we assess those? What are the standards that we're going to use to assess them? Because we are going through accreditation right now. I don't know if you knew that. The NEASC accreditation team was with us this week, so we were very busy this week. And so that's definitely something we're working on. It means
what does that accreditation mean, Lisa?
That means we can issue diplomas at the end of the Learnlife experience.
What are they?
So
called?
anyone that joins,
is that NEAS?
NEASC. And I can tell you they were so positive. It's just been incredible. We were all extremely nervous about the whole process and the whole experience, and they were at times they were in tears after speaking with some of the learners. One of the accreditation people said, you know, these kids are in a place at their age that it took me 40 years to get to. And she said, it's just amazing the things that they're learning and how much they know about each other and about themselves. It's just been an incredible week. And but the thing is that the kids were the ones that really convinced the accreditation team that what Learnlife is doing is positive and good, and they're learning. And by showing what they've learned and talking about how they've learned it, and just being responsible in their own learning and deciding what they're going to learn was just it's just been really, really incredible. In fact, they're probably going to move up. They are in discussions with us about moving up the date for the accreditation within the next 6 months. So it's possible we could have it sooner, which would be really, really great, because that's a question a lot of parents have. They say, well, this all sounds great, and and I really like the idea of my child flourishing and really being having an opportunity to grow and follow their passions, but what happens after? And we haven't had that accreditation, and now it looks really good that we'll be getting that. So that will be something that we can tell. That's what we're telling parents now. Once we're through this process, by next fall or next spring, our learners will receive diplomas when they leave. But it's not, there's also some learners that have gone on to university without the diploma, and they've used their own portfolios that they've developed themselves. In this case, they've been paper-based. Some of them have been art or writing students, and so they've gotten into university that way. So, but then there are also those learners that do the traditional way, where they say, okay, I've gotten to this point with Learnlife, I'm ready for university. I feel like I'm emotionally, psychologically, maturity-wise ready for this next step. And then they start to do their GSCEs. That's what they're called in Britain, right? GSCEs. So they're ready to take that next step, and then they start to prepare for those tests. And that's usually done then outside of Learnlife. But I would like to get to a place where we don't need to have them take those tests and prepare for those tests because they have the skills and the knowledge without having to do the tests. So, but kind of going off the
It's
topic of
essential.
portfolio.
I actually think it's essential we get to a place where they don't have to sit exams. I think that's the reason I'm in this, is for the whole sort of mental health issue, and I think the exams are causing massive mental health problems, and they are for all members of that group. I've been speaking with kids that are like top A grade students that can't get a B because the pressure to keep A stars all the time, or 9s now. It's just become numbers again. It's like I have to have a 9. If I get an 8 or a 7, I'm just failed. And then you've got the kids that are getting 4s and 5s, like, why do I bother? And it's so demoralizing, the whole thing. I even just being in school, when I've doing teacher training, was so fascinating, just being in this art room where these kids in year 7 were being given a grade, and this kid sits there and gets a 2, and he's like, oh, I knew I was really bad at art. And that's like, it was just learning how to draw, right? And never been taught how to draw. And he sits there, oh yeah, I knew I was really bad at art. And that is a moment of giving up, then loss of self-efficacy. And you're just thinking, that's going to affect that student for the rest of their life. That too.
Rest of their lives.
That's it. Now that kid's now going to determine that he is no good at drawing, or she is no good at drawing. And that's it. They'll go on and do something else. And they haven't even been taught how to draw because they don't teach drawing. So it's just like some assumption that you can do it. It's just completely bizarre to me that that system should be in place. It's horrific to me.
There's a movement in the States right now, or actually Canada, and it's ungrading. And I'm trying to I think her name is Susan Bloom, and she has written quite a bit. They have a Facebook page too, on ungrading. Jesse Stommel is another one, and they're really pushing towards the reason that I know them is because they are into the whole self-determined learning and critical pedagogy area, where they emphasize the formative assessment and not the summative, not what you get at the end. And that's what the whole pedagogy thing is about too, with the self-determined learning, is that you're more interested in the process than the end product. And so you're constantly giving them formative feedback to the point where they can actually assess themselves at the end, whether or not they've acquired that knowledge. And there are schools that have adopted this. There's the school in Israel, K Academic College, and they are doing it there as well. They've adopted pedagogy. They've said, okay, we're going to do this, and there's going to be formative assessment, but they're going to assess themselves at the end and give themselves a grade. Of course, you've always got to have the teacher, because you've got the institution saying, we need somebody with an academic credential that is giving this this student a grade. And so in 99% of the cases, the student is completely on target, right? And then all the college academic does is say, okay, that's right, you get an A, or you get a B, or you get a 1, or you get a 2. And so it's really, but it's so much more empowering for the learner, because they are actually looking at themselves and trying to, figure out, well, where can I develop? What areas are areas that need to have further development? What can I do? And the teacher is then a guide helping them along the way, which is why I think formative assessment is much more realistic than summative. And when I was working university, I got into, I didn't get into trouble, but you get a lot of pushback, because the students all want to have, they want to have a grade at this point, and then they want to have another grade after 4 weeks, and another one at 6, so they can see how they're progressing. And I made them develop their own plans and decide how they were going to, learn, and really take responsibility for it, and then assess it. And that whole process had made them rethink their whole learning. They weren't thinking anymore about the grade that they were going to get. They were thinking more about, what am I learning? How am I going to get there? What's the process that I go through? And what have I learned at the end? Instead of, am I going to get the B? Am I going to get the A? And so many of them, they had to go through what they call in German an Umdenkprozess, an unlearning process, where they had to rethink, okay, what does learning mean? What does education mean? And they hated it because it pushed, they learned how to do school, right? They learned you do this and this and this, and then you get this grade. And then what happened is they had to rethink all of that. And at the end, there were many of them that would come to me and say, you know, I hated this class when I started because there's so much that you make me do. You make me take responsibility for my learning, but I ended up learning more than I ever have in any class ever, you know. And it wasn't because I was their teacher telling them what they had to learn. It was because they were, you know, they were deciding it through the process. So anyway, I'm going off again. I get so excited about this because I see the impact in learners, and I see the impact when they see how good it is for them. You know, you were talking about self-efficacy and how that builds that up over time. And the self-efficacy, just, that's so important. And people just don't understand, you know, that you can't get that sense of self-efficacy from a grade, you know. It has to be something that happens through a process. But
So
anyway,
interesting.
I'm going
I
off
think
again.
there's so much research in it, though. I mean, because I fairly recently did my PGCE at Cambridge, and they're feeding you all of this research that says formative assessment works and summative assessment doesn't. And then you get into schools and they're training you to do formative assessment and questioning, and it's all the staff training, and it's like CPD, and it's like we're all doing this, and it's all about formative assessment. And then at the end of it, it comes down to a grade, and you're just like, well, wait a second, you just told me that grading doesn't work, and you've got all these Willem and Black inside the black box books and all this information and peer reviews that you've made me read and study and write essays on, and now you're telling me what, I just give them a grade. So we'll just forget all the research and it's crazy. It's crazy. So it's not like the research isn't there. But I had a really interesting experience because I used to teach a creativity. It's a thing called Point Zero painting that was designed in California by a lady called Michelle Cassou. And it's a process where there is no judgment. So you paint in an environment. I mean, it can be taken to anything really, it doesn't have to be in paint, but the way she does it was through paint, and it's more a mental process. And the guide, or the sort of teacher, not really a teacher, the facilitator, is not giving any feedback, and there is no positive or negative or any kind of judgment on any of the work that's being done. And it's fascinating doing it with kids, because I've been teaching that for years. I've been teaching it to kids and adults. And kids particularly find it so hard. They're like, yeah, okay, I know you're not allowed to say anything, but do you like it? And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. It looks like you're really enjoying doing it. And you seem really focused. And it's all about putting the feedback onto the person, and not about the product. So it's fascinating to see. And at the beginning they hate it because they're like, they're so used to getting that constant, oh, I love that, or well done, good job,
That's beautiful.
great,
Yeah,
and that's beautiful. And you find that within creativity, what's quite interesting is that constant feedback is conditioning, basically. So as a parent, even, you're conditioning your child to produce artwork, in terms of art, that the parent likes. So if you draw a big black blob and then a little pretty red thing and or the pink thing, and the parent goes, oh, I like your little pink flower you've done, I'm not sure about this big black swirl over here.
oh, okay.
Okay, so then as a
flowers.
child, you're thinking, okay, I'm not going to do the black swirl, I'm going to do more pretty things that my parent liked. And you keep slowly, bit by bit, you're looking for parent approval. And then you're saying, okay, and you're filtering out all the bits that your parents don't approve of out of your creativity. And it slowly shuts doors to your ability to express all of your emotions and all of how, all the feelings that are coming up. And I think that works the same for dance, singing, or music or writing. And so it's kind of fascinating to watch it. And in the courses that I've run in it in schools, the biggest thing that I found so interesting is that students have at the beginning hated the lack of feedback, but actually by the end they've said that was the most valuable thing within the course, was nobody being allowed to say anything about anything that they did, because there's suddenly the freedom to express themselves and to be original and to make mistakes and to just explore was massive. It was a huge privilege for them in the end. It was really, you know.
That's why I brought up that book yesterday, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed from Paulo Freire, because I mean, when I read that book, it all just became so evident to me how our school systems really, they do that. You know, they really oppress creativity, they oppress innovation, they oppress just free thought, you know. Of course, yeah, not everyone agrees with that, but in many ways, I think we need to give our kids an opportunity to experience what you were just talking about. You know, I mean, they need to have an opportunity to have that freedom of expression, that freedom to journey. You know, I think in Israel they call it what do they? It's a journey that they say there's a journey of learning that you have to follow, a path that you have to follow through life, and so they try to in this school that I was talking about before at K Academic College, they try to create. They allow for that journey to happen, and it happens in a very rhizomatic way, you know, where they're just going off in different directions, but they find their journey and they find their path. And anyway, it's a interesting approach. But yeah, that sounds great. I wrote it down. I'm thinking, oh, we should do that. We should offer that as one of our Taste of Learnlife things.
Yeah,
get one of the learning guides on that right away.
I'm happy to come and do some 0.0 with you guys. I think
cool.
0.0 is amazing. It's it's transform. And what's interesting too about it is that if you start, the more 0.0 painting you do, the more it affects your choices in life completely, because it's a meditative process, and you face a blank page and you're like, I have all of these colors, you have all 22 paints in front of you, and it's like, what do I choose? What do I want? Not what somebody else thinks I should want. And that mental process of like decision making is fascinating. So between the conditioning of the should and the desire and of just, I feel like I just want that. I don't know why. I just want that. And it's trying to get back to that desire of feeling like choosing cakes or sweets. And it's just like, okay, if I had to choose just one color, what would I most feel like now? And if I could make just one mark or one shape, what do I feel like? And slowly that decision process, the more you do it, it starts to become much clearer. And so then all the decisions you face in life, you start thinking, what do I want to do, rather than what's my conditioning telling me I should do. And that creates all these creative blocks that people have because they can't move forward. I mean, it's I find quite exciting is even in DT, teaching DT, it's kind of set into the curriculum because design technology is taught with iterative design. So there is a lot more about exploring and failing, making mistakes, doing prototypes, and then, you know, you spread out the possibilities, and then you're honing in, and it is about failing. So that's part of this. The actual curriculum in DT is about failing and learning from that failure.
Yep. Exactly. Vanessa hasn't said anything, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Did you want to say something, Vanessa?
Hi. I'm just listening and very interested because I've got 3 daughters. The eldest 2 are 12 and 14, and they're very academically able, good readers, and also very artistic and musical. And so I deregistered them from school because they were kind of happy enough. But now in home ed, they just thrive for about 2 years now. And so the kind of challenge I've got now is interesting to me, what you're talking about, because they're doing so well with their own self-directed learning and quite a few courses through Dreaming Inspires home learning through Kat Patrick. And, you know, the level takes them up to their needs. They're almost working like university students from what I can see. And they loving it so much. For example, the courses are ending off this week. And my 12-year-old was actually reading one of the books last night, even though her course is already finished. Now the last lesson. because they're so intrigued with what they're learning and how it's been handled. And now I'm facing, well, actually, they actually need qualifications. So now my 14-year-old is looking to write GCSEs next year, but it feels like a killer, you know, after how they love what they're doing. So I'm very interested in ideas of online profiles, and IT was my degree and background. So I would love to see something developed, and I would love to follow that for them, where it's more of like a pull from the universities to assess, rather than the universities look to see what grades you've got. You know, I think if you can write an entrance exam and get in, you should be able to do anything, much like we do for work. You know, because I worked for Arthur Andersen doing business consulting, where you could have any degree almost, but if you could think right, they'd bring you in and put you on the team. And so I think more of that needs to happen. You get pulled into the right flow that you want to go into, rather than have to push and almost like waste these precious years where the kids just love thinking and learning on their own steam.
Yeah. I completely understand what you're talking about there, and just I mean, I couldn't take my kids out because in Germany we can't do that, but my sister did, and I saw her kids flourish. You know, she did homeschooling in the States, so it was just incredible. Yeah. But
And
creating
Vanessa,
that, I do think that will change too in terms of the portfolios. You know, if she can create, if either of the girls can create portfolios now and start, you know, documenting and showing what they've done. I mean, I think that would be helpful to them too. Joe, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just to add, Vanessa, I get how you're feeling. My son's 14 now, and we've been home educating for 4 years, and so I really feel that GCSE, you know, because all his friends who are still in school, you know, they're all making their choices and they're getting ready for next year, and I know it doesn't suit him, and it will not be. You know, he unlike your daughters, he doesn't love reading, and he's smart, but he's not academic in a traditional sense, and so you know, the GCSE model and A levels is not going to be the sweet spot for him. So I wrestle. I have this daily flip flop from. We'll just do English and maths because they feel like they are basic tick box for a lot of things, and then we'll forget everything else. And then other days I'm like, oh my goodness, no, we need to do. And then I'm like, but I think we'll just see how we go, because I think what I have learned, you know, reading all the posts and the blogs, and is actually, should he need something when he's 18, when he decides what he wants, if he wants to go to university or needs a job, actually he could do it really quickly. Like you could do a crash course in a GCSE, and actually rather than take away the joy of his experience now, you know, if he can capture some of his learning, we're trying to work with him on a reflective process in his week. And my dad's actually, he was a teacher, but he's mentoring him as a kind of because my son doesn't love writing, so my dad's trying to is mentor him to get him to verbally reflect, just so he can develop and learn a skill. He doesn't like writing things down, but he can articulate it, and that's been really helpful. And then just trying to, you know, for him to start capturing just some of the things that he does in his week. We've got a Google Doc that he writes things, he types things in, which again, it doesn't look great, and but it's more that just, look, you've done that little course, we're just going to write that down, and it's just growing something. But that's why I'm fascinated when there's a chat, because I'm like, I just want someone to create a thing that, you know, I can just like, and he can sculpt, and I think he would benefit from a framework to work within that he could create and make his own.
I think my kids too.
Maybe that's a job for you, Vanessa.
I know. Yeah, maybe it is. Yeah, I'll get back to work and. I did think of that. I just think, you know, I'm more of an ideas person though than maybe a coder. You know, especially with the way coding has moved on. Mine is more business programming than end user apps and such, but I'm quite a good ideas person.
Yeah.
Well, just
That's the starting point, I think, isn't it? In terms of,
I've got a 16-year-old that has just dropped out of school, so she's just like, done. I'm not doing this anymore. And I think fair enough, because she was tricked, I feel like, almost, because for having spent 5 years, she did spend some of it in an IB thing because we did some time in India, but she spent essentially 5 years being told that GCSEs were everything and being drummed into her, and she got to that point and they cancelled them all because of COVID.
Yeah.
She was just given some grades, and that whole cohort of people that were just had their exams cancelled because, well, we'll just come up with some grade that from your past thing. She was somebody that was going to try and cram it all in at the end and just try and get past the exams, and she didn't do as well, and the whole system didn't support her at all and made her feel stupid. She suffers from dyslexia, but she's incredibly enterprising and has loads of business ideas. So I took her off to Bali to go to green school, and she actually hated that because that had been condensed into, they suffered from COVID as well because they'd had to condense it down to English and maths, and she's like, I've just done all that, I don't want to do English and maths now. So she's just like, I'm leaving, I want to set up a business instead. So I think it's
She'd
so
come to Barcelona.
well, she could do, but she's so done with education. She's like, because I mean, she could go, and she's interested in media and fashion and the arts, and she, I just think she's going to set up her own business, and I'll just leave it. She's entrepreneurial, and I feel that education has failed her. It's interesting because I have a 23-year-old who did all a 12A style kind of first and did it the opposite way, and she's done everything, but she's a fashion photographer, and what she actually needs is not her degree. She needs followers on Instagram. That's what she actually needs. She needs media stuff. So her exam, she's not really working for employers. The people she works for, all the designers and the magazines and all of that kind of world, they're not interested in your first degree or your A stars. They want how many followers have you got? And then she's looking at my 16-year-old who's just dropped out of school, who's got huge following on social media. She's like, how did you get that? That's what I need. And it's just like crazy, because it's like, well, what does one need in this world to succeed? Actually, it depends what you want to do, doesn't it? Yeah. It's very strange, sort of a new world we're entering. But I feel for you definitely at that choice moment. Well, hopefully Learnlife will produce a model that we can.
Yeah, no, I'll keep my. I've got to dash. I'm going to actually collect them. They're at Forest School this morning, so I'm going to go and get them. But thanks so much for all the gems of information you've been sharing. Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. Bye.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Have a good weekend.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm going to stop.
But yeah, really nice to meet you, Elise Marie. I'm really excited that that Learnlife are getting there.
Yeah, was there a time frame? Was there a time frame, Lisa Marie, on the portfolio? I missed the beginning.
For the portfolio, you mean what they're doing with Learnings?
Yeah.
The first version of Learnings is supposed to be ready in September, and the Learning Vitae is supposed to be part of that. That's my understanding. The first version of it, which in software language it means it's not going to be the final version.
And Lisa Marie, if you don't mind, Rosina and I were chatting yesterday after your when were we chatting? We were chatting at some point yesterday. We're both in different stages of obviously our journey with Learnlife. We're both looking for some kind of written information about we get the why, and there's lots out there for the why, but the what and the how. So Rosina's looking to send information out to potential investors, and I'm having conversations with a guy who has a network of secondary schools in the UK, and the question they want is but what is it that Learnlife does, and why not why, we get the why, and how, because we don't know how to communicate that, because we've not experienced Learnlife and, you know, sat in some sessions, and it's really hard. Like this guy yesterday who runs all these schools, he's like asking me questions, and I said, look, I'm not the expert, but I now need to email him something, and it's to try and open the door so you guys can come in and do the conversation, but I can't get the door opened if I don't know how to communicate what it is. Is that right, Rosina? That's what you're looking for too, isn't it, in terms of?
Yeah, well, because I got that it's part of actually the week. What does the week look like for a child? What does the day-to-day, what does the school day look like? What do you do when you arrive in the morning? And when you're presented with a project, are you presented with a teacher, or how much input does the teacher have, or the tutor have, and the student have? What's the balance, and how many projects are you doing in a week? Do you have a teacher-led project and then a child-led it's just the actual workings of it, and how that works. If everyone in the class, you've got 10 kids and they're all doing a different project, how does the tutor manage that? It's those kind of questions that I have. It's the practical day-to-day thing.
Devin is probably the best person for you to talk to. I understand exactly what you guys are talking about, because I have the same problem in understanding it and trying to explain it to people what it is and how it is that it gets done. And that was something that the NEASC, when they were there at Learnlife this week with accreditation, they were very insistent upon, tell us what a day looks like. And learning guides put up schedules and would talk about learners. The thing is, they've been moving so fast and doing so much in such a short period of time, which NEASC also said during the process, is that they've not seen a school advance so quickly in such a short period of time, that they haven't documented it. They haven't written it down. So it's on the heads of the learning guides, and it's all in the I can't think of the right word. It's in the DNA of the organization. Yeah. And it's documenting that, you know? And so I feel where you're coming from. And when I'm at my, at the team planning meeting next week, I will mention this, and I will talk about how this is the struggle, that people need to know what it is and how it's done, so that you guys can explain it to the people that you need to explain it to get the funding. Because I mean, Christopher has to do the same thing right now. He's out there, you know, with doing fundraising and meeting with investors, and you know, he has to do it too. So we need to have that. And I'll talk to Ariki too, who's responsible for the hubs, and see if we can't get something that can be used, because I agree with you. I mean, it's hard for me to understand it as well. Coming in and after just a few months and trying to explain it to people what it is that we do. I mean, some people look at the videos and they say, "Oh, I get it. You're a trade school." I'm like, no, not really. Not exactly. Some of that is trade, but not everything. So, and and explaining it to parents is tough too, because so many of them come in and then like learners will reach a point where they become so self-directed that the learning guide is just there if the learner needs help, right? And then the parents are saying, well, what am I paying for, you know, if my child can already do all these things? And it's kind of like, well, you're paying for the process for them to get to that point where they can do that. And if they're ready, then sure, then they definitely should move on to bigger and better things, which happens, you know, it happens in Barcelona too, at the hubs, where learners just say at some point, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready for the next phase, which is, for me, that's incredible. If a child could say, I'm ready, without the school system saying, okay, you're ready, now go. Because not all of them are ready when the school system says, okay, you're ready, now go. And so it's great when kids can then decide that on their own. So
really powerful. So I mean, you guys get to see the fruit of the beauty of the model that Learnlife have developed. So, but it's good to know that we're not missing something obvious, because I think both of us have been through the website and gone, we just need, it's literally like just a link or one page that goes, this is how we do it. And it's like, I don't know how to communicate that. But that's good. At least we're not missing it. And maybe I'll email Ulrike as well, because I actually need something to send this guy quite quickly.
Okay, definitely email her.
Great. I've got her email, so I might, I'll do that now because I've reached out to
Yeah.
Stephanie, but I'm not sure she's, yeah, Ulrike would be
No,
great.
yeah, definitely contact her.
Thank you. As long as we're not missing it.
No, I've had lots of discussions with marketing about this, that we need to be better at communicating the message. So this is something that we're working on. So you're not alone.
Brilliant. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Well, thank you
Thanks for
guys.
chat,
Thanks for
guys.
coming.
What did you
Lovely
think,
speaking.
Joe, of the thing that I made? I might send that to you, Lisa, and see what you think.
It's on my list. I'm looking at it next after this call. So I haven't read it through yet.
I made, I'll send it to you, Lisa Marie. I've sort of made a proposal document, which is how I interpret what it is. So I'll send it to you and see what you think, because I've sent it to through Joe. I sent it to Stephanie, and I've sent it to Brian, and he said it pretty much sums it up. But I just don't know if it should be made in Learnlife style rather than my style. But it's a kind of updated version of the document I made when I was originally looking at building a green school. So I've just kind of changed it round to be a Learnlife model. And but I've kind of got a page on 360 assessment and formative assessment and how I imagine it looks like. So you can have a look and see what see if I've got it right.
Okay. Okay, that would be great.
I'll comment this morning, Rosina, and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Nice to see you guys.
Really lovely to chat with you.